hope you're all doing well. आवाज आ रही है सबको? Am I audible, guys? Good afternoon. Thank you. Great. Now we'll be covering modern Indian history through roughly 500 questions, maybe a little more, maybe a little fewer. Okay. Now the theme for today is the colonization of India following the advent of Europeans and a glimpse of 18th century India. So these are the three important themes that we'll be broadly covering. We'll go question by question. I'll be asking you to first answer the question, then I'll be providing my inputs. Online students, you are also welcome to participate. Okay. Now, for question number 1, we need to match list 1, that is explorers, with their place of birth, the country of origin. They read Christopher Columbus, Jacques Cartier, Francis Drake and Ferdinand Magellan. So, Christopher Columbus, by birth he was not Portuguese. By birth he was Italian. He was an Italian sailor serving under the Portuguese king. Okay, so he was flying the Portuguese flag. He was on commission by the Portuguese king. So 1, 3. Jacques Cartier, नाम से क्या लग रहा है? Is a Frenchman, right? He was from France. Francis Drake, a famous British privateer. Privateer is a fancy word for a pirate. So he was an official pirate contracted by Queen Elizabeth of England to go and raid Spanish ports and settlements across the continental coast. Okay? And finally, Ferdinand Magellan. He was Portuguese by birth, but sailing under which flag? Spanish flag. So like Columbus, who was an Italian flying the Portuguese flag, he was a Portuguese person flying the Spanish flag. Okay? Achha. What is he most well known for? He was the first navigator who circumnavigated the globe. So क्या correct combination बना? A is 3, B is 4, C is 2 and D is 1, that is A. Coming to the next question. Which of the following options regarding the chronological sequence of arrival of Europeans company in India is the correct one? Online students, what about you? Right. So it is D. Lock किया जाए? ठीक है. So correct answer is Portuguese, Dutch, British, Danes and the French. Portuguese first arriving in India in 1498. Where? At Calicut. Who was the explorer? Vasco da Gama. The Dutch arriving in India for the first time in 1605. Okay? Where? Surat. Masulipatam was the first Dutch factory. Okay? British 1608, also at Surat. The Danes 1620 or 1618 or 20, right? I believe it is 1620. And finally the French 1664, the French East India Company was established, and 1667 They arrived in India at Surat. Okay. The correct answer is D. They arrived at Tranquebar, eastern coast, Tamil Nadu. Next, question number 3. Which of the following pairs is or are correctly matched? Company and their year of establishment. British East India Company 1600. Correct or incorrect? Correct. Dutch East India Company 1602. Also correct. And French East India Company 1664. Also correct. So correct answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Next question. Which of the following statement is not correct with respect to Portuguese rule in India? A. Portuguese was the first European power that came to India. Albuquerque was the first Portuguese governor in India. Vasco da Gama reached Calicut with the help of Abdul Majid Nair or Munid Nair. And finally, Portuguese wanted to establish their supremacy over the spice trade. Which of these is incorrect? B. Everybody agrees? Why is it incorrect? Francisco de Almeida was the first Portuguese viceroy, first Portuguese governor in India, with Albuquerque being the second one. He was appointed as Portuguese viceroy in 1509. First Portuguese viceroy of India served from 1505 to 1509. That is Francisco de Almeida. उसके बाद Albuquerque. ठीक है? Next, consider the following Portuguese governors: Alfonso de Albuquerque, Francisco de Almeida, Nuno da Cunha. Which are correct? 2, 1, 3. Francisco de Almeida, Alfonso Albuquerque, Nuno da Cunha. 2, 1, 3. C. Who introduced the Carta system in India? It was the Portuguese who introduced the Carta system. What was the Carta system? Trade passes and permits issued by the Portuguese to whom? To private merchants and traders who wanted to conduct trade on the Indian Ocean. So this was done in return for a monetary payment. पैसा लेकर के लाइसेंस इशू करते थे. They were acting as the self-appointed constables of the Indian Ocean. If somebody did not obtain a cartas, what would happen to them? And they were still conducting trade, they were still smuggling goods. The ship would be captured, boarded, the sailors would be imprisoned or put to death, all the goods would be seized and the ship would be sunk. Okay? So the Carta system introduced in India by the Portuguese. Question number 7. Which of the following statements is or are correct about the Portuguese? Number 1. They introduced tobacco cultivation in India. Correct or incorrect? Correct. Number 2. They established the first printing press in India. Also correct. And number 3. The system of Inquisition was started by them. Also correct. Correct answer is C, 1, 2 and 3. Let me explain it. Okay. Now they introduced not only tobacco cultivation in India but also a number of new varieties of crops and plants which they brought to India from their empire in the west. Where was their empire in the west? In Brazil, South America. So other South American crops and plants. Can you name a few? Yeah. Potato, new varieties of cashew nuts, ground nuts, kidney beans, rajma, right? Papaya, guava, maize, a new variety of mango known as the Alfonso, pineapple, red and yellow, chili peppers, along with cocoa, etc. Okay. What was the result of the introduction of all these new crops? Most of these new crops that were introduced, were they cultivated primarily for consumption purpose in India or primarily as for commercial purpose? Commercial purpose. So with this, the process of commercialization of agriculture, is that going to accelerate or not? Yes, it is. So this directly contributed to the acceleration of commercialization of agriculture. What is the impact of this commercialization of agriculture going to be? Hmm? Yes. So it is going to form the basis for the monetization of the regional economy and the rural economy. A cash nexus is going to start emerging, and those regions which till now had remained economically depressed, especially the ones away from the political centers of Delhi and Agra, they are now going to start emerging economically. And as they began emerging economically, what is going to happen? These regions, are they not going to become economically self sufficient and become and come into a position of sustaining a local political system that is independent of royal control, of central control? Yes. So this is also going to contribute to the ultimate regionalization of polity. Now, while the Portuguese had introduced all these crops in India back in the 16th century, the process of regionalization of polity is going to ultimately mature during which century? During the 18th century. So 16th and 17th century would be the incubation period for the regionalization of polity because of the economic emergence of the peripheral regions. Maturity कब होगा regional polities का? 18th century में. Is this much clear? They were also the first to introduce the printing press in India. What kind of literature did they want to publish? The Bible, religious literature. And in which language do you think they would prefer to print the Bible and other religious works? Not in Latin. Did Indians know about Latin? No, Latin का L भी नहीं पता था, right? Therefore, in the local languages, primarily Malayalam and Kannada. ठीक है? So they printed the Bible in Malayalam and Kannada. ठीक है? What were the objectives that the Portuguese pursued while in India or while in the Indian Ocean region? What was their reason for coming to the east? First of all, in order to create a monopoly over the Indian Ocean trade, especially the spice trade. So first thing they came for was monopoly. Secondly, they wanted to wage a holy war against Islam. So they wanted to carry on the crusade. Thirdly, they wanted to establish a Portuguese Christian empire in the east, being governed from India. And lastly, they wanted to govern all the territories they had acquired by defeating the primarily Muslim monarchs ruling in different parts of the Indian Ocean region. ठीक है, तो क्या फोर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स थे इनके? मोनोपोली, imperialism, crusade and governance. Is this clear? Now, as part of their policy of conducting a holy war against Islam and for establishing a Portuguese Christian empire in the east, they introduced the infamous Inquisition. Right? Inquisition, what did it refer to? It referred to the establishment of courts of inquest. Right? Now, let me give you a brief background of Spanish history, or more specifically of Iberian history. So, if this is the Iberian Peninsula, which water body is this? The Mediterranean, and this is the Strait of Gibraltar between the Spanish island, now the British island of Gibraltar, and the Moroccan Tangiers. Okay? Sure. Now, during the 8th century, a new power in the east had started expanding vigorously in all directions. What was it? The Islamic Caliphate. By the 10th century, Islam had established its roots across North Africa. Now, the final frontier was across the Mediterranean. So, there was one Arabic general, Tariq bin Zayed, who launched an invasion of the Iberian Peninsula, and the Islamic Caliphate of Andalusia was established over here. Okay? Now, their rule lasted for about 3 centuries before they were pushed back by a new invading group from the north known as the Visigoths. The Visigoths established their control over Spain, and in order to reinforce their cultural conquest, who are they going to start persecuting? The non-Christians. So, they wanted the reconquista, the reconquest of Europe to be complete. They wanted to end all the vestiges of Islam as well. And now the new Christian monarchs of Spain, they are going to start introducing a new mechanism to discover and to root out secret Muslims and secret Jews. This process was known as the Inquisition. So, courts of inquest were set up under royal charter by the Kingdom of Spain, and these courts of inquest used to get reports from ordinary subjects that they suspect such and such person or such and such group of secretly being a Muslim, of secretly being a Jew, and then this court of inquest is now going to start torturing them in order to force a confession. If they confess, they will be offered to recant their beliefs that from now on I promise that I am not going to be a practicing Muslim, a practicing Jew any longer. I reaffirm my faith in Christianity. तो वो सब करना पड़ेगा. If they don't do that, they are going to be tortured and put to death. In 1580, what happened? Portugal and Spain, they were united with each other in a process known as the Iberian Union. This was exactly the period when the Inquisition was going on in Spain. Now, as Portugal came under the Spanish crown, the Inquisition spread to Portugal and its overseas colonies as well. It was in regards to this that Inquisition came to India as well. Is this clear? समझ में आया है? पक्का? So, system of Inquisition was also started by them in India. Clear? Question number 8. In context of the advent of European powers in India, the term Estado de India can be best described as the administrative system of the Portuguese in India. The phrase Estado de India literally means the state of India. Okay? So, what does this tell us about the nature of Portuguese colonialism during the late 15th and early 16th centuries? That from the very beginning, they were interested not only in the creation of trade monopolies, but in the gaining of overseas empires as well. So, you remember the names of those governor generals, right? They were not simply Portuguese governors or governor generals, rather they were Portuguese viceroys. For example, Alfonso de Albuquerque was appointed directly by the Portuguese ruler as the Duke of Goa, right? So, he, after conquering Goa in 1510, was elevated to the position of Duke of Goa. So, that means Goa and the surrounding territories that it commanded became a duchy of the Portuguese Empire in the Indian Ocean region. Is this clear? So, Estado de India क्या हो गया? Administrative system of the Portuguese in India. Alright. Next question. In which of the following places the Dutch established their trading centers in India? Nagapatnam, Chinsura, Machilipatnam, Surat, Bharuch, Agra, Cochin, Ahmedabad, Patna, or all of the above? बताइए. देखो, B is incorrect. While it is true that the Dutch established a factory at Surat and a factory at Bharuch, they did not have a factory at Agra. C is also incorrect because while they had a factory at Cochin, they did not have a factory at Ahmedabad. Did they have a factory at Patna? Yes, which was finally handed over to the British after their defeat in the Battle of Bidara in 1759. So, C भी incorrect हो गया. Correct answer A. Nagapatnam, Chinsura and Machilipatnam. Nagapatnam and Machilipatnam located where? Coromandel coast. Machilipatnam also known as Masulipatnam in present day Andhra Pradesh, Nagapatnam in present day northern Tamil Nadu. Chinsura in Bihar, it was also known as Bedara. Okay? Correct answer is A. Nagapatnam, Chinsura and Machilipatnam. Next, question 10. What made Jahangir issue a farman in 1613 permitting the English to establish a factory permanently at Surat? A. Was it reconciliation between English and the Portuguese? No, the English and the Portuguese at this point of time, at this early stage, were at loggerheads. They were in a cutthroat competition. So, there was no question of reconciliation. B. The defeat of the Portuguese naval squadrons by the British. This is correct. Now, the Portuguese were the earliest European powers to arrive on Indian shores, and their century long lead in the Indian Ocean region had allowed them to consolidate complete control over India's overseas trade and maritime movement. The port of Surat was serving as the principal port of the Mughal Empire. It was the most important port when it came to the conduct of trade by Gujarati and other merchants from India towards the Arabian Peninsula, towards Persia, towards Central Asia, and it was also serving as the most important port for Muslim pilgrims going to Mecca in order to perform Hajj. Is this clear? Now, the Portuguese had already established a factory at Surat, for which they had compelled the Mughal emperors to grant them permission. Because if the Mughal emperor did not grant them permission to do so, what could they do? They could blockade all travel from Surat to the west, Hajj as well as trade. So the Mughals were in a sense compelled by the British. And now the English were here, the Dutch were here. Both of them petitioned to Jahangir to allow them to set up a factory at Surat. Initially, Jahangir was reluctant to do so. Why? Because had he gave them the permission, since the British and the Dutch were rivals of the Portuguese, how would the Portuguese have reacted? They would have reacted violently. They would have tried to disrupt the Mughal trade once again. So, Jahangir at this point of time wanted to simply wait and watch. He was waiting for what? For the British to prove that they were superior to the Portuguese on the seas. And once they did that, that is when he is going to allow them to establish a factory at Surat. This happened through which battle? 1612, Battle of Swali. Swali was a small island off the coast of Gujarat, and it was off this coast, this island's coast, that a British naval squadron headed by which British sailor? Captain West had defeated the Portuguese. Okay, so correct answer is B. Question number 11. The French got the site of Pondicherry from A. the Adil Shahi Sultan of Bijapur, B. the ruler of Chandranagar, C. Shaista Khan the Mughal viceroy in the Deccan, or D. Qutub Shahi Sultan of Golconda. So, let me give you an idea of the political map of the Deccan during this period. The Deccan consisted at this point of time, while the French were trying to expand their power base in India, of primarily three regions: the Deccan Suba, of the Mughal Empire. This was to the north. The state of Bijapur on the eastern coast, and the state of Golconda on the western coast. What is the question asking? The French got the site of Pondicherry from which of these rulers? बताओ. The obvious answer is Golconda, but that is not the case. ठीक है, यहाँ पे थोड़ा और बैकग्राउंड में जाते हैं. In 1636, who was the Mughal emperor at this point of time? Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan's forces had defeated both Bijapur and Golconda. ठीक है. This had resulted in a treaty in 1636 under which the rulers of Bijapur and Golconda were restored to their respective thrones. However, whose overlordship would they now have to accept? Mughal overlordship. They would also have to commit roughly 50,000 horses for the service of the Mughal Empire. They would have to provide military assistance whenever called upon. They would also have to provide an annual tribute. But they were granted complete autonomy in internal matters. Now, Bijapur and Golconda were the successors of which medieval sultanate in Deccan? They were the descendants of the Bahmani Sultanate, है ना? Who were the traditional rivals of the Bahmani Sultanate? Vijayanagar Empire, which was now defunct. Gradually, it had disintegrated and power of the throne had been transferred to regional chiefs known as Nayakas. Now, those Nayakas were still continuing. Where? To the south of Bijapur and Golconda. However, the Mughal Empire was deeply interested in the trade of this region. What was this region known as? Coromandel. In India, it was traditionally known as the Chola Mandalam region. The British called it the Coromandel. Why? Not because it was ruled by the Cholas at one point of time, because they realized that the external trade from Gujarat is roughly 4 times smaller than the external trade happening annually from the Coromandel region. So, would they want the Coromandel to remain out of their control, or would they want to bring it under their control? In fact, they were feeling compelled to conquer Coromandel as well, and therefore, would they like it to remain under independent Nayakas, or would they like it to be conquered by their subordinates Bijapur and Golconda? They would like it to be conquered by their subordinates Bijapur and Golconda, and therefore the treaty also provided that 1/3 of all new conquests in the south would go to Golconda, and 2/3 would go to Bijapur. Now, the area around Chandragiri, area around Pondicherry, etc., they had all been captured by Bijapur and Golconda sometime between 1630 and 1650. Okay? So, initially it was under the local Nayakas. Recently, it had been captured by the Bijapuris and Golkondis. Now, the strip of land where Pondicherry would later be established came under the territory of Bijapur, and it was from them that the French had obtained the permission to establish their factory over here. तो correct answer क्या होगा इसका? A, the आदिल शाही सुल्तान ऑफ बीजापुर. समझ में आया ना? याद रहेगा? Next question. Which of the following pairs is or are correctly matched? Name of the war and causes. First Carnatic War, Austrian War of Succession. Second Carnatic War, problem of succession in the Carnatic. And third Carnatic War, 7 Years War. All three are correctly matched. The first Carnatic War time period, 1746 to 48. Now, while there were many other factors, the outbreak of war in Europe between Britain and France provided the pretext for both their companies in India to settle their scores. So, the first Carnatic War took place in the backdrop of the Austrian War of Succession, which took place in Europe from 1740 to 1748. Okay? Regarding the second Carnatic War, there was no war going on in Europe, but the issues between the companies in India had still remained unsettled. Therefore, war was a natural outcome. Time period 1749 to 54. And the third Carnatic War, like the first, was triggered by open war between the British and the French Empire. Time period for both is going to be 1756. कितने साल का वॉर है? 7 years. So 63. Correct answer is C, 1, 2 and 3. Question number 13. Arrange the following events in correct chronological order. Second Carnatic War, Battle of Wash, Treaty of Paris, Battle of Plassey. Second Carnatic War, time period you have just seen. Battle of Wash, Treaty of Paris, and Battle of Plassey. Which of these occurred earliest? 1, 4, 3, 2, 3. Correct answer 1, 4, 2, 3. Treaty of Paris took place at the end of which war? The 7 Years War or the third Carnatic War. Okay. Between whom the Battle of Wash was fought? The Battle of Wash was the most decisive battle of which war? The third Carnatic War. Carnatic Wars, also known as the Anglo-French War. So it was a battle between the British and the French. The correct answer is B, British and French. Which of the following pairs is or are correctly matched? First Carnatic War, Treaty of Paris. Third Carnatic War, Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. Second Anglo-Mysore War, Treaty of Mangalore. Is the first pair correct? Second pair incorrect. Correct क्या होना चाहिए? Reverse. First Carnatic War ended in 1748 with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. Third Carnatic War ended in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris. Second Anglo-Mysore War ended in 1784 with the Treaty of Mangalore. So correct answer B. Sorry. B. Only 3. Number 16. Which one of the following was the first fort constructed by the British in India? Correct answer is B. Fort St. George. Fort St. George, located at Madras, later went on to become the headquarters of the Madras Presidency. Founded in 1639 by the local British factor at Madras called Sir Francis Day, who had purchased roughly 3-kilometer strip of coastal land from the local Nayaka ruler, who was the one-time local chief of the Vijayanagar Empire. So correct answer is B. Fort St. George. Fort William established by the company at Calcutta when 1690. Okay. After they obtained the zamindari rights of 3 villages. It was situated at the confluence of which 3 villages? Gobindpur, Sutanati and Kalikata. The village of Kalikata gives the city of Kolkata its modern name. During the British period, it was called Calcutta. Fort St. David, constructed by the British at near Madras, just south of Madras, after they had already constructed the fort of Madras. And Fort St. Angelo, a Portuguese fort in Kerala on the western coast. ठीक है, समझ में आया ना इतना? Question 17. With reference to the history of India, consider the following pairs. Number 1, Aurang, in charge of treasury of the state. Number 2, Indian agent of the East India Company, Bunyan. And number 3, Mirasidar, designated revenue payer to the state. Which of the pairs given above is or are correctly matched? Is A correct? A is incorrect. The word Aurang is a Persian word. It has 2 different meanings. Either it means a warehouse where valuable goods are stored, or it means the throne. ठीक है? औरंग कौन से मुगल एम्पर के नाम में आता है? औरंगजेब. So exact meaning of औरंगजेब is the jewel of the throne. औरंग का जेवर, औरंगजेब. जैसे पैर में पहनने वाले जेवर को पाजेब भी बोलते हैं, पायल बोलते हैं, पाजेब भी बोलते हैं, वैसे ही औरंगजेब, that is jewel of the throne. So either it means throne or warehouse. It is not the custodian of the treasury or in charge of the treasury. ठीक है? Bunyan, this is correct. He was an Indian agent of the East India Company. The term Bunyan has been adopted from the Hindi word Banya, which means in colloquial sense a merchant. ठीक है? So he was a merchant who was conducting trades on behalf of the company with other Indians, either other Indian merchants or Indian craftsmen, artisan. So he was the main procurer of goods for the English East India Company. The English East India Company, especially during its early period when its activities were dominated by commercial enterprise, employed a large number of Indians. So one are these Bunyans, some other Indian agents. Dadans. Who were they? They were also Indian merchants who acted as middlemen between the East India Company and Indian producers, especially textile manufacturers, right? Now, textile manufacturing in India during this period, that is the late 18th century or early or the 18th century, what did it look like? Was it happening on a mechanized, large, mass-produced scale in factory setting, or was the Indian textile industry primarily a cottage industry? It was primarily a cottage industry, a household industry, and therefore different households would be involved in the production of cotton textile or any other textile for that matter, right? Now, the company was a major purchaser of Indian cotton, so the services of hundreds of thousands of artisans would be required. It was virtually impossible for the company to establish a direct personal relationship with each and every artisan. Therefore, they had to rely on Indian merchants who had traditionally been in the habit of procuring finished cotton goods from Indian artisans, Indian textile manufacturers. Who were they? They were the Dadans, and Dadans acted as the putting out agents. So the British in India operated along the terms of the putting out system. क्या होता है putting out system? In which the main purchaser, that is the East India Company, is going to float contracts, float tenders for the procurement of a particular quantity of goods at a particular price. These Dadans would go and place their bids. Once they got these bids, they would receive a loan or an advance from the East India Company, and it was their job to go and contract the other Indian producers, the actual craftsmen. So each artisan would be given a loan advance by the company, and at the end of the production cycle, he would have to promise to repay the Dadan, this Indian merchant, the particular supply amount of goods, which would then be sold to the East India Company. Dadans क्या थे समझ में आया है? Then we also had Gumashtas. Who were they? They acted as translators and accountants for the company. ठीक है? Second pair, Bunyan, Indian agent of the English East India Company. Correct. Third one, Mirasidar, designated revenue payer to the state. Is this correct? This is also correct. The term Mirasidar emerged in the context of the Raiyatwari settlement. Under the Raiyatwari settlement, what was the arrangement like? क्या arrangement था? Did the Raiyatwari settlement, like the permanent settlement, also envisage a local middleman between the producer and the state? It wanted to establish a direct relationship between the company and the taxpayer, the state and the peasant, right? And there were to be no middlemen. But do you remember what the effects of the Raiyatwari settlement had been? क्या हुआ था? It had led to the same problems that were produced by permanent settlement, including the emergence of intermediaries. Now, in the Raiyatwari settled areas, these intermediaries were known as Mirasidars. They were the ones who, after trapping the ordinary peasants into debt traps, they had obtained their title deeds. So, they were now the designated title holder, and whoever holds the title, they are the ones who pay revenue. So, these were the designated revenue payers to the state. Third one is also correct. Correct answer B, 2 and 3 only. Question number 18. towards the end of the 15th century, which of the following factors contributed to the discovery of new trade routes to India and the East Indies by the European powers? Number 1, the rise of nation states under strong monarchs. Yes or no? Yes. Number 2, the capture of Constantinople by the Ottomans. Also true. Number 3, the zeal to spread Christianity. Also true. Number 4, Renaissance in Europe. Also correct. And number 5, internal feuds of succession in Indian princely states. This is not going to be correct. Now, it is true that the Europeans later exploited the internal feuds among Indian princes in order to begin interrupting or interfering in the political affairs of India. But since they were yet not in India, if there were any succession disputes, that could not have acted as a motive for them to try and come to India. Correct answer क्या होगा? 1, 2, 3 and 4 only. That is B. Number 19. With reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. Number 1. The Dutch established their factories / warehouses on the east coast on lands granted to them by the Gajpati rulers. Is this correct or incorrect? Gajpati rulers famously ruled over which part of the east coast? Odisha. From when to when did their rule last? From the 13th to the mid 15th century. That is 1451, 1452 के around तक. When did the Dutch first arrive in India? 1605. So could it have been the Gajpati rulers who granted them permission to make factories here? No question of this. First statement correct or incorrect? Incorrect. They were granted permission to make factories on the east coast by primarily the rulers of the Golconda Sultan, Qutub Shahi dynasty of Golconda. So statement 1 is incorrect. Number 2, Alfonso de Albuquerque captured Goa from the Bijapur state. Correct. When did he do this? 1510. Had he acted alone or was he assisted by another major Indian power? Which power? Vijayanagar. Now, while Vijayanagar had not actively assisted the Portuguese in defeating the Adil Shahis, they had remained neutral. Who was the Vijayanagar ruler when this took place? It was Krishna Dev Raya, 1510. And next, the English East India Company established a factory at Madras on a plot of land leased from a representative of the Vijayanagar Empire. Is this correct or incorrect? We have already mentioned this. Fort St. George यहाँ पे बनाया था. क्या है? Correct है? Incorrect है? It is correct. So which of these statements are correct? B, 2 and 3 only. ठीक है? So these were the questions pertaining to the advent of Europeans. Next few questions regarding 18th century India. Consider the following Mughal rulers: Shah Alam II, Muhammad Shah, Farooq Siyar, Alamgir II. What is the correct chronological order of the above rulers? Shah Alam II, 1759 to 1806. Muhammad Shah, 1719 to 38. Farooq Siyar, 1713 to 19. And Alamgir II, 1754 to 1759. Among them, who was the earliest? Farooq Siyar. 3. उसके बाद Muhammad Shah. 2. Then Alamgir II. 4. 1. ठीक है? 3, 2, 4, 1. Correct answer C. 3241. Next, there are two lists. Consider the following pairs: regional states and founders. Hyderabad, Nizamul Mulk; Bengal, Ali Vardi Khan; Awadh, Safdarjung. How many pairs given above is or are correct? Is the first one correct? The first one is correct. The state of Hyderabad was established by Chinchkilish Khan, also known as Nizamul Mulk, also known as Asaf Jah the First, in 1724. Okay. Second one, Bengal, Ali Vardi Khan. Is this correct or incorrect? This is incorrect. The state of Bengal was established in the year 1713 by Murshid Quli Khan. न्यू स्टेट ऑफ बंगाल का कैपिटल क्या था? मुर्शिदाबाद, नेम्ड आफ्टर मुर्शिद कुली खान. तो अगर नाम ना याद आए तो एटलीस्ट यू कैन रिमेंबर द नेम ऑफ द कैपिटल. ठीक है. द स्टेट ऑफ अवध was the founder Safdarjung. Is also incorrect. Awadh was established as a semi-autonomous dukedom within Mughal Empire in 1722 by Saadat Hasan Khan. Also known as Burhanul Mulk, also known as Ali Jah the First. Safdarjung was a later Nawab of the Awadh kingdom when Nadir Shah had invaded India. ठीक है. So Safdarjung was the Nawab at the time of Nadir Shah's invasion of India. Who was the Mughal emperor when Nadir Shah invaded in 1739? Muhammad Shah, also known as Rangila. ठीक है. तो करेक्ट आंसर क्या हुआ इसमें? बी, वन पेयर ओनली. Which of the following statements is not true about the Ijara system? A. It was a system of revenue farming. B. It encouraged the role of middleman. C. Under this system, land revenue was fixed for the peasants. And D. The Ijaradar paid a fixed amount to the state treasury. Which of these is not correct? C. Under this system, land revenue was fixed for the peasants. What was the Ijaradari system? Revenue farming, where revenue collection rights were farmed out. That means they were auctioned off to the highest bidder, right? So whoever put in the highest bid, that is going to be what they are going to pay to the state treasury. Are they going to collect less than what they have bid, or are they going to try and maximize their collection? They will try and maximize their collection. And in this scenario, would the burden of tax on peasants remain fixed, or would it be variable? Variable. In fact, year on year they would try to extract more and more revenue. So it was not fixed. Okay? It was variable. Clear hai? Now, next, Savai Jai Singh of Amer built 5 observatories in India. At which of these places? Jaipur, Ujjain, Agra, Delhi and Varanasi. Ujjain, Jaipur, Mathura, Varanasi and Delhi. Delhi, Jaipur, Gwalior, Mathura and Ujjain, or Mathura, Jaipur, Delhi, Varanasi and Gwalior. ये मैं बता देता हूँ. I don't expect you guys to know about this. Correct answer is B. Ujjain, Jaipur, Mathura, Varanasi and Delhi. ठीक है. Savai Raja Jai Singh, he founded which city? Jaipur. Belonged to which dynasty? The Kachwaha dynasty, who were rulers of Amer. Now, under which ruler was Savai Jai Singh a prominent military commander and nobleman? कौन से मुगल एम्परर के कंटेम्प्रेरी थे ये? सबसे पहले वाले देखो, अकबर के दौर में थे भगवान दास एंड मान सिंह. ठीक है, दैट इज व्हेन देयर एसोसिएशन विद द कछवाहास वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड. सवाई राजा जय सिंह, also known as Mirza Raja Jai Singh, was the chief of the Kachwaha dynasty, ruling from Amer during the reign primarily of Aurangzeb and Bahadur Shah the first. ठीक है, 18th सेंचुरी के फिगर. क्वेश्चन नंबर 24. अच्छा, जंतर मंतर है क्या? व्हाट वाज द जंतर मंतर? जंतर मंतर क्या केवल प्रोटेस्ट ग्राउंड है, वहां पे मंत्र फूके जाते हैं, जादू किया जाता है? व्हाट इज इट? इट इज एन एस्ट्रोनॉमिकल ऑब्जर्वेटरी. कैलेंडर बताने के लिए, टाइम को ट्रेस करने के लिए इट वाज यूज्ड. ठीक है, मैच लिस्ट 1 विद लिस्ट 2. नेम्स ऑफ मराठा सरदार्स, प्लेस ऑफ पावर और हेडक्वार्टर्स. गायकवाड्स एट बड़ौदा, भोसलेज एट नागपुर, पेशवा एट पूना, सिंधियाज ऑफ ग्वालियर एंड होलकर्स ऑफ इंदौर. करेक्ट आंसर ए. आई एम ट्रस्टिंग यू गाइस. ठीक है, मैं चेक नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैच नहीं कर रहा हूँ. ए है. Consider the reign of the following Peshwas and arrange them in the correct chronological order. Balaji Vishwanath, Bajirao the first, Balaji Bajirao, Madhav Rao. सबसे पहले Balaji Vishwanath. He was the first Peshwa who was acting independently of the control of the Chhatrapati. So he was the person who founded the Maratha Confederacy. When? In 1713. He was followed by Bajirao, time period 1720 to 1740, followed by Balaji Bajirao, also known as Nana Sahib, time period 1740 to 1761, followed by Madhav Rao the first, time period 1761 to 1772, when he was assassinated by the at the orders of his uncle Raghunath Rao, right? And following this, his minor son, that is Madhav Rao Narayan, was placed on the throne. So correct answer है 1, 2, 3, 4. That is D. Next, remaining questions are going to be from the theme of conquest of India. Which battle is associated with the black hole tragedy incident? Battle of Plassey. Correct answer is B. Battle of Plassey. What was the black hole tragedy incident? पूरा सिलसिला पता है क्या? Tensions were growing between the English East India Company and the new Nawab of Bengal. New Nawab of Bengal का नाम Siraj-ud-Daulah. Why were such conditions tense? Because of two important issues. One immediate issue and one long-term irritant in the relationship. What was the long term irritant? Misuse of dastaks. Dastaks पता है ना क्या है? What were they? Duty free trade passes issued by the Calcutta Council of the East India Company on the basis of a royal farman granted in 1717 by the Mughal Emperor Farooq Sir. ड्यूटी फ्री ट्रेड पासेस का मिसयूज हो रहा था. हाउ? Yeah, the company officials were using it for conducting their private trade, or even more harmfully, they were selling it off to Indian counterparts. So it was resulting in a huge loss to the Bengal treasury. So that was the long-term irritant. The immediate factor behind the black hole tragedy became the additional fortifications done by the English East India Company at Calcutta. Now, this was done in 1756. A new war had started between which European powers? The British and the French. Which war? The Third Carnatic War had started in 1756. Now, both the British as well as the French had made additional fortifications of their factories at Calcutta and Chandarnagar within Bengal, respectively. Now, fortification was a sovereign power, and the Nawab of Bengal felt that these companies were violating his sovereign authority by making additional fortifications. Initially, he sent a warning to both sides. The French complied, they tore down the additional fortifications. British ignored the request. Instead of giving them a second warning, the Nawab attacked Calcutta, captured it, imprisoned a large number of Englishmen, and forced the rest to escape. They escaped to a riverine island in the Hooghly known as Fulta and took refuge over there. What happened to the captors of the Nawab? That was described by an Englishman who was a survivor, or at least claimed to be a survivor of this black hole tragedy. क्या नाम था इसका? John Zephaniah Holwell. क्या बताया इसने? Did he paint a rosy picture of the Nawab? Did he praise his character? नहीं, बोला कि मारा कम घसीटा ज्यादा है इसने, राइट. एंड साथ में क्या करा? He trapped all of us, roughly 145 people, in a 22 by 22 feet kal coterie in the month of July in the muggy heat of Calcutta, where there was single window. What happened? Overnight, one after the other, the Englishmen, men and women, both started to die. This Zephaniah Holwell somehow survived, and he went to Fulta, took refuge over there with the other residents, and when Clive came back, he told this story to Clive. And in the English press, this news became a sensation. Why? Because by this point of time, Clive had already completed the conspiracy against the Nawab and overthrown him. He had installed a new puppet ruler, Mir Jafar, on the throne. Now, this act of Clive had to be somehow justified in the eyes of the British public opinion. So, presently, most historians believe that either the story of the black hole tragedy is totally manufactured, or if not totally manufactured, at least it is greatly exaggerated. तो मैक्सिमम 4-5 लोग मरे होंगे, इन्होंने बोला कि सैकड़ों लोग मर गए, राइट. So that was done in order to create a sense of outrage to justify Clive's actions in Bengal. ठीक है, तो करेक्ट आंसर क्या है इसका? बैटल ऑफ प्लासी. क्वेश्चन नंबर 27. Who among the following was the first European to initiate the policy of taking part in the quarrel of Indian princes with a view to acquire territories? The answer is Dupleix. Who was he? The French Governor General. During which war? The first Carnatic War. Before the second Carnatic War, he had been recalled. Okay. Now, what does this mean? To initiate the policy of taking part in the quarrels of Indian princes with a view to acquire territories. Why was Dupleix interested in Indian politics? Not for political expansion for the sake of political expansion. Rather, political expansion or territorial expansion for both the British and the French at this point of time was only a means. केवल जरिया था. What was the end? Final destination क्या था? Creation of a trade monopoly. They felt that if they were able to secure a favorable trade alliance with Indian powers, and especially one in which they are able to create a territorial kingdom of their own or a territorial enclave of their own in especially the important trading hubs of India, they will be able to elbow out the other power. So it was with this view of obtaining a monopoly that Dupleix was the first European to start involving himself in Indian quarrels, in Indian affairs, in order to acquire new territories. And what would he offer the Indian princes who were fighting against each other? The services of the superior European military. So they wanted this, and in return they would agree to give a parcel of primarily coastal land to the French East India Company. Who initiated this? It was Dupleix. Did the British follow suit, or did they remain committed to their political non-intervention? They also followed suit. So among the British, Clive was the first who initiated the same policy. Next question, number 28. Consider the following statements with reference to the Battle of Plassey. 1. It was fought between the English East India Company and Shuja-ud-Dawla of Bengal. Correct or incorrect? Company and Siraj-ud-Dawla. Number 2. Battle of Plassey had its roots in the Battle of Buxar. It was the other way around. Battle of Buxar to some extent had its roots in Plassey. Number 3. It was the beginning of the British hegemony in Indian political affairs. Correct. And number 4. It helped in ousting the French as the major rivals of the British. Also correct. So the revenues and resources of Bengal could be oriented towards the British war against the French. So that was the reason for their easy and decisive victory over the French during the Third Carnatic War. Okay. So which of these statements is correct? 3 and 4. Number 29. There are two lists, extension policy and governor general. How many of the pairs given above is or are correctly matched? Policy of ring fence, Lord Cornwallis. Did he introduce it? No. This is incorrect. Policy of ring fence was first introduced by Warren Hastings. What did it involve? It involved primarily the use of Awadh as a buffer state to protect the company's possessions and territories in Bengal from the invasion of which Indian power? Primarily the Marathas. So Bengal or Maratha kingdom के बीच में Awadh was to act as the cushion which was supposed to absorb the blow of Maratha invasions. So Awadh would be the frontier line. That policy was followed by Warren Hastings. Is this clear? Next, subsidiary alliance, Warren Hastings. Also incorrect. This was introduced by Lord Wellesley. Lastly, doctrine of lapse, Lord Dalhousie. He is the one who is best known for implementing it. Okay. So how many pairs is correctly matched? One pair only. Okay. Was he the one who introduced the doctrine of lapse? No, it had been introduced as early as 1834 by the Court of Directors. and before the beginning of Dalhousie's tenure as Governor General of India in 1848, a number of Indian territories had already been annexed by the British under the doctrine of lapse. So he did not initiate the doctrine of lapse, but he was the one who applied it most frequently and most aggressively. Okay. So answer is A, one pair only. Next, we need to match list 1 with list 2. First Mysore War, Treaty of Salbai. Second Mysore War, Treaty of Madras. Third Mysore War, Treaty of Mangalore. फर्स्ट मराठा वॉर, ट्रीटी ऑफ सेरिंगापट्टनम. तो ट्रीटी ऑफ सेरिंगापट्टनम या फिर फर्स्ट मैसूर वॉर में कौन सा ट्रीटी? ट्रीटी ऑफ मद्रास. सेकेंड मैसूर वॉर, ट्रीटी ऑफ मैंगलोर. थर्ड मैसूर वॉर, ट्रीटी ऑफ सेरिंगापट्टनम. फर्स्ट मराठा वॉर ending with the treaty of Salbai. 1882, 1782, 1782, 1769, 1784 in Seringapatam, 1792. Correct answer 2431 A. हाँ, सेकेंड मैसूर वॉर, द ट्रीटी ऑफ मैंगलोर. अच्छा ये 3 है. थर्ड मैसूर वॉर, ट्रीटी ऑफ सेरिंगापट्टनम. 2341. ठीक है. नाउ coming to the next question, arrange the following states in the ascending order of their acceptance of subsidiary alliance system from pre-independence India. Mysore, Awadh, Pune, Sindhia. Mysore, then Awadh, then Pune, then Sindhia. Correct answer 1, 2, 3, 4 A. Do you know the entire list? क्या क्या है? हैदराबाद, मैसूर, तांजोर, अवध, पेशवा, गायकवाड़, सिंधिया, भोसले and होलकर. These are the years. ठीक है. ईयर याद रखना उतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, बट डू ट्राई टू रिमेंबर द करेक्ट क्रोनोलॉजिकल ऑर्डर. आगे चलें. Number 32. Which one of the following statements does not apply to the system of subsidiary alliance introduced by Wellesley? A. To maintain a large standing army at others' expense. B. To keep India safe from Napoleonic danger. C. To secure a fixed income for the company. Or D. To establish British paramountcy over Indian states. It is C. To secure a fixed income for the company. This was not one of the intentions of Wellesley when he introduced the subsidiary alliance system. What was the subsidiary alliance system? It was a system of unequal treaty alliances between the English East India Company and other Indian powers, Indian princely states, introduced with a view to do what? First of all, neutralize hostile Indian powers. Secondly, to fortify India against a possible French invasion under Napoleon. Thirdly, to expand British military presence across India at no personal expense, at others' expense. And fourthly, with a view to uh, deprive their true rivals in India, namely the Marathas and Mysore, of any possible Indian allies, because by this point of time the British desired that all the other Indian powers would become part of the subsidiary alliance system. तो यहाँ पे कभी कहीं पे भी कोई एंगल कमर्शियल वाला दिख रहा है और इकोनॉमिक वाला दिख रहा है? There is no such angle. Correct answer is C. ठीक है. Next question. Which one of the following was not the feature of the subsidiary alliance of Wellesley? A. The British were responsible for protecting the ally from any external threats. B. All internal threats were to be handled by the ally alone with no help from the British. C. The ally was to provide resources for maintaining the British armed contingent stationed in its territory. And D. The ally could not enter into any agreement with other rulers without the permission of the British. Which of these was not the feature? B is not a correct feature. Okay. So, what were the important provisions of the subsidiary alliance system? Firstly, a subsidiary force would have to be hosted by the Indian ally in his territory at his own cost, without any cost to the British company. Okay. Secondly, an English resident would be stationed at the headquarters of the Indian ally. इसका पर्पस क्या होगा? He is going to act as the liaison between the Governor General in Calcutta and the native ruler. He is also going to be the one who is going to have command over the company's forces stationed in that territory, over this subsidiary force. Number 3, the Indian state, the subsidiary ally, will have to surrender its foreign policy. Without the company's say so, it will not have the power either to declare war on any other power or to make peace with any other power if a war is ongoing. Okay? So, surrender of foreign policy. These first 3 provisions, do they appear to be more in favor of the company or the Indian powers? They are all in favor of the company. So, Indian powers would also require something in return. What were they promised? Non-intervention in internal affairs. The company promised them complete autonomy in internal affairs, that the English resident or the Governor General or any other company administrator through the English resident is not going to interfere in internal matters, be it personal matters, be it expenditure matters, taxation matters, commercial matters, etc. Nothing is going to be done. And lastly, the company emerged as the protector of their Indian allies. They vowed to protect them and support them politically, militarily, as well as diplomatically in case of both an external invasion as well as an internal rebellion. So, both cases mein the company was the guarantor of the protection of their Indian ally, the Indian rulers. Is this clear? These were the 4 provisions, and since the company promised to protect the Indian allies both from external threats as well as internal rebellions, so second option, option B, is incorrect. have to match the stratagem or development with the governor, the British administrator. Dual government, Robert Clive, first Maratha war, Hastings, second Maratha war, Wellesley, third Maratha war, Warren Hastings. So match karo. Dual government introduced in 1765. Who was governor of Bengal at this point of time? It was the brainchild of Robert Clive. So A ka 1. First Maratha war time period 1775 to 1782. Who was Governor General? Warren Hastings. Second Maratha war 1803 to 1804. Who was Governor General? Wellesley. And third Maratha war 1717 to 1718. Who was Governor General? Hastings. 1432. Correct answer is C. Okay. Arrange the following events in correct chronological order. Battle of Plassey, first Carnatic War, first Mysore War, first Maratha War. First Maratha War 1775 to 82. First Carnatic War 1748 to 1746 to 48. First Mysore War 1767 to 69. Battle of Plassey 1757. So which of these is the earliest one? 2, then 1, then 3, 4. 2, 1, 3, 4. Answer is B. Consider the following statements about dual system of administration in Bengal, which was established soon after the Battle of Bagh in 1764. Number 1. Under this system, the British were practically responsible for Diwani functions only. Correct or incorrect? This is incorrect. And number 2. Divorce of power from responsibility was inherent in this system. This is correct. So this was the hallmark of the system. What did the system provide for? The company had already been granted the Diwani powers of Bengal by the Treaty of Allahabad. Diwani meant the right to collect revenue. Now traditionally state powers were bifurcated into two functions, Diwani and Nizamat, revenue collection and governance. Now while the Nawab of Bengal remained at least theoretically responsible for Nizamat functions, that is providing governance, theoretically it was the company that became responsible for revenue collection. But did the company have any experience in the field of revenue collection? No. Further, for collecting revenue, some expenditure would have to be made, some tax collectors would have to be hired and trained, they would have to be sent out, an entire establishment would have to be erected. Did the company want to make this extra expenditure? It did not want to, and therefore it got the Nawab of Bengal, who now had only Nizamat functions, to appoint deputy Diwans who already had the experience of revenue collection. But these deputy Diwans are no longer going to be working for the Nawab, rather they are going to be working from the company, who is the Diwan Bahadur of the state of Bengal. They are going to be the Nayab Diwans or deputy Diwans, and while they have been appointed under the name, seal and authority of the Nawab of Bengal, the Nawab of Bengal is virtually a powerless puppet ruler. He is simply rubber stamping all the company's appointments, and the company, since it is the Diwan of Bengal, has the power to remove these deputy Diwans as well, right? So in essence, is the company either responsible practically for either Nizamat or Diwani functions, or is it practically not responsible for any aspect of governance? It is practically not responsible for any aspect of governance, and herein lies the essence of the dual system of dual government, that while all the power was in the hand of the company, all the responsibility had been given to the Nawab. Okay? Power comes from controlling the finances. Finances were under the control of the company, but it was getting the deputy divans to collect revenue on its behalf. Initially, these revenues had been flowing into the state treasury of Bengal. Now they are going to start filling the coffers of the English East India Company. That is the only difference. But they did not assume any responsibility of ruling Bengal. So correct answer क्या होगा यहाँ पर? B, 2 only. ठीक है? Had the question been that under this system, the British were theoretically responsible for Diwani functions only, would it have been correct? Theoretically, they were, because they were now the Diwan of Bengal. Next, question number 37. Arrange the following phases of colonialism in the correct chronological order. Mercantilism, laissez-faire, finance imperialism. So, first one, mercantilism. Second one, free trade, laissez-faire. And third one, finance imperialism. Which moderate leader and economic theorist first came up with this tripartite partition? R.C. Dutt. In his book Essays on Indian Economy. He divided the history of British colonialism into 3 phases. Mercantile capitalism, industrial capitalism, and financial capitalism. What was the basis for this division? During each of these phases, the company adopted a distinct political, economic, administrative, social, and cultural policy towards India in response to what? The evolving economic priorities of the British Empire in India. Right? During this first phase, time period was 1757 to 1813. What was the nature of the economic relationship between India and Britain? Was India primarily a supplier of raw materials or primarily a supplier of finished textiles? Finished textiles. And during this period, what did the company want to do? Did it want to focus primarily on increasing profits that it can earn from purchasing cheap Indian goods and selling them at a huge profit in England, or did it want to start interfering in Indian politics, conquer territory, provide governance, carry out administrative and social reform in order to transform the very fabric of the country of India? The first one, so they would adopt a policy of non-intervention. From 1813 to 1857 was the phase of industrial capitalism. How had the relationship between India and Britain changed? Industrial revolution, which had began in England during the decade of the 1760s, had now accelerated and reached into a high enough gear that it had started to dominate the economic interests of Great Britain rather than mercantilism. And with this change, the economic role that India played in the colonial economy also changed. Earlier it was a supplier of finished products. Now it would become a supplier of raw material and a consumer of factory made British goods. right? And therefore, now the British policy towards India is going to be fundamentally different. During the third phase of financial capitalism, 1857 onwards, Britain's industrial revolution had started to heat up. Britain had now started to quickly approach the feared middle income trap, and that would mean for every new pound invested into the development of English industries, the returns, would they be increasing or would they be diminishing returns? Diminishing returns. And therefore, what was the best avenue for further investment of British capital for higher returns? Should they keep on investing in the further development of the English industry, or should they start to invest their capital in other areas? In other areas where the opportunities for rapid growth are greater. What was the ideal when avenue for that? It was India. But here also capital investment had to be done in a very deliberate manner. ऐसा नहीं है कि जिस भी सेक्टर में चाहे लगा दो. Why? Because if the British had set up rival textile industries in India, it would have harmed the British textile industries back home, and therefore they are going to start investing in those industrial sectors which are going to be even more beneficial, either for the extraction of raw material from India or for the development of the primary industry, the plantation agriculture, mining, etc., or they are going to make it so that the Indian British goods can deeply penetrate the market of India. So what are the sectors that they are going to start investing in? Railways, ports, roadways, canals, plantation agriculture, mining sector, etc. ठीक है, ये तीन phases सबसे पहले आइडेंटिफाई किए आरसी दत्त ने. Was he a pioneer in this field, or was he building upon the scholarship of some other thinkers? This idea had first been proposed by Karl Marx in his Das Kapital. When the Das Kapital had been published, third phase of British capitalism, the financial phase है, that was yet to unfold. So R.C. Dutt's contribution to this framework was the addition of the financial phase. पहले दो फेज किसने आइडेंटिफाई किए थे? मार्क्स ने. ठीक है, तो इन तीनों में सबसे पहले क्या आएगा? मर्केंटिलिज्म, सेकेंडली laissez-faire, and thirdly finance imperialism. Laissez-faire means free trade. Before this, company enjoyed a complete monopoly in India, but it was harming the interests of the industrialists. Why? Because the company was acting as a middleman, eating into the profits of the industrialists. They wanted to trade freely with India, procure raw material directly from India cheaply, and sell their goods in India directly, thus maximizing their profit. So they called for ending the company's monopoly. So that free trade movement reflected in the policy of laissez-faire. Correct answer C, 1, 2 and 3. आगे चलें. Wellesley established Fort William College at Calcutta because he was asked by board of directors at London to do so. He wanted to revive interest in Oriental learning in India. He wanted to provide William Carey and his associates with employment, or he wanted to train British civil servants for administrative purpose in India. Answer is D. He wanted to train British civilians for administrative purpose in India. Okay? The correct answer is D. When was this college established? 1800, within Fort William at Calcutta. Thus it was called the Fort William College. Its first principal was John Gilchrist. And while it trained British civilians for administrative purpose in India up till 1802, this training activity stopped in 1802. Who stopped it? The court of directors stopped it. And they replaced it with a new civil services college in London, known as the Haileybury College. Uh, why had Wellesley introduced a training college for civil servants in India? Because the new recruits who were coming from England, they were completely unfamiliar with India, and they were expected that as soon as they got here, they would directly engage themselves in the task of administration. This was leading to administrative mismanagement. It was also causing increasing resentment amongst Indians. It was also resulting in financial losses, and it was drawing the British into unnecessary conflicts, and therefore he said that they should be trained in India. So 2-year training course hona chahiye. However, court of directors became increasingly alarmed with this. Why? Because who were the instructors at this Fort William College? They were associated with, they were affiliated primarily with the Asiatic Society of Bengal. ठीक है, अब Asiatic Society of Bengal patronized what type of scholars? Are they going to patronize scholars who are going to say that the British civilization is miles ahead of the Indian civilization, or are they going to favor are they going to patronize industrialists, Orientalists primarily? Orientalists who were great admirers of Indian civilization and the Indian past. And since they were the ones who were in charge of training these young and impressionable civil servants in India, what was the danger? That the new civil servants, instead of taking a stern attitude towards India, would have a soft corner for Indians. They are going to start engaging in activities that were not necessarily in the interest of British colonialism. Therefore, they ended the training activities over there and transferred the training to London. Is this clear? समझ में आया है? Correct answer is D. Question number 39. Consider the following statements. Robert Clive was the first Governor General of Bengal. Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of India. Which of these statements is correct? Neither is correct. Both are wrong. Why is the first one wrong? Clive was never Governor General of Bengal. He was simply Governor of Bengal from 1765 to 1767. Okay? Warren Hastings, was he the first Governor General of India? Also no, he was the first Governor General of Bengal. This post, Governor General of Bengal, was created by which act? The Regulating Act of 1773. Therefore, both statements are incorrect. Number 40. Consider the following statements regarding the dual government in Bengal. Number 1. It was designed by Robert Clive because he wanted to avoid taking direct responsibility for governing Bengal after the Battle of Plassey. Correct or incorrect? अच्छे से पढ़ो सवाल, फिर उसके बाद बताओ. Was it introduced after the Battle of Plassey? It had been introduced after the Battle of Buxar. Therefore, this statement is incorrect because of this factual inaccuracy. Sentiment सही है, ठीक है, ये कामचोर थे अंग्रेज, that is why the British had introduced it, Clive had introduced it. Number 2, it continued till the Battle of Buxar, in which the company was given Diwani rights. False. It started after the Battle of Buxar when the company was given Diwani rights. Number 3, it led to famine of 1770 in Bengal Suba, in which 1/3 of the total population was wiped out. Also correct. Okay. So correct answer 1 and 2 only. Okay. Which are not correct. Sorry. Number 41. Consider the following statements regarding dual government in Bengal. Number 1. It was a political arrangement in which East India Company was entitled to both Diwani rights and Nizamat power. False. It was entitled only to Diwani rights. Number 2. East India Company controlled the Nizamat through its right to nominate the deputy Nawab. This is correct. Okay. Not only did it nominate deputy Diwans, but also received the right to nominate deputy Nawabs. So Nawab was made virtually powerless because now the company also took charge of governance functions. But it left the Indian functionaries to their own devices. However, administration is going to suffer. Why? Because the bulk, more than 95% of the companies of the total revenues of Bengal were being taken away by the company, only leaving a very minuscule sum for administrative purposes with the functionaries of Bengal. So correct answer is B, 2 only. Regarding the first statement, from who was Nazmuddollah? He, he may have been son of Mir Jafar, but that would all come much later on. That came in 1772 when the new governor of Bengal, Warren Hastings, abolished the system of dual government. Okay. Next, question number 42. A Regulating Act of 1773 did not lead to A. Creation of Board of Control to supervise companies' affairs, appointment of Warren Hastings as Governor General of Bengal, creation of Council of Four to assist the Governor General, and establishment of a Supreme Court at Calcutta. The answer is A. So, creation of Board of Control to supervise companies' affairs was provided for by the Pitt's India Act, 1784. Warren Hastings was appointed officially as the first Governor General of Bengal. A council of 4 executive councillors was created to assist him, consisting of Francis Monson, Clavering, and Wherewell. The Act mentioned these 5 names directly. Okay? These 5 names were mentioned in the Act. And establishment of a Supreme Court at Calcutta, this was also provided for by the Regulating Act of 1773. It was established the next year in 1774. Who served as the first Chief Justice? Elijah Impey. Next, question number 43. Who founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal in Calcutta in 1784? Answer is William Jones. Which famous work from Sanskrit did he translate into English? The Abhigyan Shakuntalam. What is it? A Sanskrit drama penned by Kalidas. Which of the following Governor Generals is known as the father of the civil service? Answer is Cornwallis. What were the reforms he introduced with respect to the civil services? He introduced the covenanted civil service for the first time, thus ridding the company of the ad hoc arrangement for appointing district collectors and magistrates introduced initially by Warren Hastings. Now, these officers within the covenanted civil service are going to be career civil servants. They are not going to be given ad hoc charge within the company's bureaucracy. ठीक है, तो ऐसा नहीं होगा कि कंपनी के और फंक्शनरीज हों आर ऑर्डिनरली इन्वॉल्व्ड इन इट्स कमर्शियल फंक्शंस एंड दे आर गोइंग टू बी गिवन स्पेशल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी ऑफ डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ जर्नल of justice, of collection of revenue, etc. Rather, these are going to be career civil servants who are going to be trained in the art of administration. Covenanted civil service create kiya isne. Further, some other reforms he introduced. He convinced the court of directors to do what? To give them high salaries. He also banned within the civil service the acceptance of any type of bribe or gift, and he also introduced promotion on the basis of merit or seniority. No, seniority principle was introduced by him. So that is one of the hallmarks of career civil service. Whoever is senior is going to be given priority. Okay. So these were the changes he introduced, and that is why he is remembered as the father of the civil service. Next, by a regulation in 1793, the district collector was deprived of his judicial powers and made the collecting agent only. What was the reason for such a regulation? कौन सा? बताइए. Answer should be C. Cornwallis was alarmed by the extent of power concentrated in the district collector and felt that such absolute power was undesirable in one person. Now, the post of district collector and magistrate had been created by which British Governor General? Warren Hastings, back in 1772. The same officer served both as the chief revenue collecting agent as well as the chief magistrate of a particular district. That means he was the chief judicial agent as well. So chief justice at the district level and chief revenue collector at the district level. Do you see any problem with this arrangement? What? There is no separation of powers and a huge conflict of interest exists. The same person is in charge of collecting revenue as the person who is in charge of administering justice. As the chief revenue collector, it is natural for his decisions to be challenged by the tax assessee, the taxpayer. But when they approach the court, who do they find sitting at the chair? Their exploiter, the chief revenue collector. Okay? So that was the problem, and it was Cornwallis who, through his regulation in 1793, introduced the principle of separation of powers at the district level. The magisterial functions of the revenue collector were taken away. District collector was no longer going to be district magistrate. Rather, his magisterial functions were transferred to other court officials, partly to the district courts and partly to the Diwani and Nizamat courts that were created by Cornwallis as well. Okay, so correct answer is C. Number 46. Consider the following statements. 1. Calcutta Madrasa was founded by Warren Hastings. Yes or no? Yes. When? 1781. Sanskrit College at Banaras by Jonathan Duncan. Also correct. When? 1791. And Fort William College founded by Wellesley. Correct or incorrect? अभी तो करा ना. This is correct. Which of these statements are correct? All three. D. 1, 2 and 3. What was the purpose of the Calcutta Madrasa? For the British civil servants to learn Sharia law. Sanskrit College for British civil servants to learn? Hindu personal law, Hindu civil law. And what was the purpose of the Fort William College? To train the young British civil servants in India itself. Number 47. Which of the following is or are associated with the tenure of Warren Hastings? Establishment of the Calcutta Madrasa. Was the Calcutta Madrasa established during his tenure or not? Yes, 1781. Establishment of Supreme Court in Calcutta? Yes, 1774. Establishment of Fort William College? No. Who is it associated with? Wellesley. So correct answer B, 1 and 2 only. Number 48. Which of these was a feature of permanent settlement introduced by the British? Number 1, fixed land revenue. Number 2, non-transferable ownership of lands. And number 3, cultivators reduced to the status of tenants. Number 1, is it correct? Land revenue was fixed in perpetuity. Number 2, non-transferable ownership of lands. No. So landowner, zamindar was designated as the landowner with complete right to sell off or dispose of his property in any manner he saw fit. This is incorrect. Number 3, cultivators were reduced to the status of tenants. Yes, as zamindars were designated as landlords, the peasants became tenants on their own land. So select the correct answer. Answer is 1 and 3 only, B. Number 49. Consider the following statements regarding the permanent settlement introduced by the British. It was introduced by Alexander Reed. Who were the architects? Cornwallis and John Shore were the architects of the permanent settlement. Statement 1 is incorrect. Number 2, the zamindar's right of ownership was made hereditary and transferable. Yes. And number 3, the system remained confined only to the province of Bengal. No, it was also extended to some other regions such as Banaras and Northern Madras Presidency. Okay? So regions of Dindigul, etc. So which of these statements is correct? B, 2 only. Number 50. What was the consequence of permanent settlement on rural society in Bengal? A, the zamindars invested capital and enterprise to improve agriculture along the lines of British yeoman farmers. No. In fact, they treated their zamindari estates as cash cows, trying to squeeze as much return out of them as quickly as possible without trying to invest for the improvement or expansion of agriculture. B, a group of rich peasants known as jotedars succeeded in consolidating their position in the villages. This is correct. So some rich peasants, they became agents of the zamindars, acting as the true face of peasant exploitation at the village level. Zamindars kahan par the? They were all living in the cities. Who were their exploiters? Who did they offshore or outsource their exploitation to? To these dominant peasants, that is the jotedars. The rayats prospered as a result of fixed revenue levy upon them. This is incorrect. Permanent settlement was associated with poverty, shortage and famine. And D, the system of collectorate introduced by the company for exercising supervisory control over zamindars failed to take off. This is also incorrect. In fact, one of the only successes of the zamindari system was the creation of the new collectorate system, the idea of district collectors being present in every district. Okay? So that lasted throughout the length of the rest of colonial rule in India. So correct answer ho gaya B. That is not the only correct one. Number 51. With reference to revenue collection by Cornwallis, consider the following statements. Number 1. under the Rayatwari system of Rayatwari settlement of revenue collection, peasants were exempted from revenue payment in case of bad harvests or natural calamities. There was no such provision. Okay? Peasants had to pay the tax that they had been made liable for, and if they fail to do so, their estates, their farms would be confiscated and then auctioned off. हाँ जी. No, Rayatwari system was not under control, so that is another reason why this statement is incorrect. Okay? Number 2, under the permanent settlement in Bengal, if the zamindar failed to pay his revenues to the state on or before the fixed date, he would be removed from his zamindari. This is correct. What was this provision known as? The sunset clause. Or sunset law, introduced in 1794. So it was not there originally, it was introduced 1 year later. And this was directly responsible for which phenomenon? The rising mobility of the land market, and these zamindaris which were auctioned off, they were snapped up at cheap rates by the rich merchants living in Calcutta. And with this, which phenomenon emerged? Absentee landlordism. Okay? Which of these is correct? B, 2 only. Which Governor General of Bengal underwent impeachment proceedings in the British Parliament? The first one, that is Warren Hastings. He was recalled in 1784 and impeached for an extrajudicial killing of an Indian merchant while he was serving as Governor General of Bengal. Okay? So while he was not found guilty, he remains the only Governor General to be officially impeached by the British Parliament. Henry T. Colebrook was a professor of Sanskrit in which of the following institutions? Fort William College, Srirampur Mission, Kashi Vidyapeeth or Asiatic Society? Answer is Fort William College. Henry T. Colebrook in 1805 began teaching Sanskrit at the Fort William College. एक डाउट इमर्ज होना चाहिए क्या? अरे वो तो ठीक है, संस्कृत पढ़ा रहे हैं. 1802 I had informed you that something had happened. What? The training activities had shifted to England, right? But other teaching activities had continued. So the British civil servants were not to be trained only in the art of administration but also in law. Now back then there was no Anglican system of civil law. Even now there is no Anglican system of civil law. We don't have a uniform civil code. We have different Muslim personal laws and Hindu personal laws, and therefore a good understanding of both the Shariat as well as the Hindu personal law was required. For that, what was required? Sanskrit, Persian and Arabic learning. So that is what was going on at the Fort William College at Calcutta even after training of British civil servants ended. Study of Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic, Urdu, etc. these were carrying on. Correct answer is A. Now, he was acquitted, he was found not guilty. So, but charges of impeachment were brought against him. Number 54. Match the following educational institutions with their establishers. Calcutta Madrasa, Lord Wellesley. Is this correct or incorrect? Incorrect. Who established Calcutta Madrasa? Warren Hastings. Sanskrit College, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. False. Who introduced it? Jonathan Duncan. Vedant College, Jonathan Duncan. Incorrect. Who founded it? Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And Hindu College, David Hare. This is correct. He, along with Alexander Duff and Rajaram Mohan Roy, laid the foundations of the Hindu College at Calcutta in 1817. So how many pairs are correctly matched? A, only one pair. Number 55. With reference to educational institutions during colonial rule in India, consider the following pairs: institutions and founders. Sanskrit College at Banaras, William Jones. Calcutta Madrasa, Warren Hastings. Fort William College, Arthur Wellesley. Which of these are correctly matched? Is the first one correct? Sanskrit College at Banaras, Jonathan Duncan. Calcutta Madrasa, Warren Hastings. Fort William College, Arthur Wellesley. Incorrect. It was Richard Wellesley, the Governor General. Arthur Wellesley was his younger brother. He was Major General Arthur Wellesley. Okay. He played a crucial role in defeating both Tipu Sultan as well as the Marathas during the fourth Anglo-Mysore War and second Anglo-Maratha Wars respectively. Later on, he would go on to defeat Napoleon at the famous Battle of Waterloo, and for his services to the British Empire, he is going to be created a Duke of Britain, right? And as Duke of Wellington, he is going to contest the elections for Prime Minister in 1830 and he is going to become Prime Minister also. So 1830 में यही बंदा आगे जाके ब्रिटेन का Prime Minister भी बनता है. But this is Arthur Wellesley, Major General. He was not the Governor General. Governor General कौन था? बड़े भैया जी. कौन? Richard Wellesley. Correct answer 2 only. B. Question 56. Consider the following statements with respect to the policy of paramountcy. Number 1. It was introduced by Wellesley. Paramountcy was introduced for the first time, doctrine of paramountcy, by Hastings in 1813. Okay? Why particularly in this year in 1813? हाँ, दूसरा Hastings. 1813 any act had been passed? Charter Act of 1813. And with this, what began? Industrial capitalism. And the political policy to be followed during the phase of industrial capitalism, was it avoidance of conquest and a conservative approach to conflict, or was it aggressive conquest and a policy of imperialism? Aggressive conquest and a policy of imperialism. And therefore, it was in aid of this policy of imperialism that the doctrine of paramountcy was introduced by Hastings in 1813. So, Wellesley is not correct. Okay. Second, it aimed to assert British supremacy over all Indian native states. This is correct. It sought to establish the East India Company as the paramount power of India. So whatever it said went is going to go. Nobody else is going to be allowed to question or check the authority of the British in India. Which of these is correct? B, 2 only. Which British military officer led the conquest of Sindh in the early 19th century? It was Major General Charles Napier. When? In 1843. Immediately after the British defeat in which war? The first Anglo-Afghan war. Who was Governor General when this took place? It was Lord Ellenborough. Okay? Now, next question 58. Consider the following states: Awadh, Jhansi, Nagpur, Gwalior. Which of the states given above were annexed through the doctrine of lapse? Was Awadh annexed under the doctrine of lapse? No. Was Jhansi? Yes. Was Nagpur? Yes. Was Gwalior? It was not. Okay. So correct answer B, 2 and 3. So are you familiar with the correct chronological sequence of their annexation? Doctrine of lapse during Dalhousie's tenure. Satara, जैतपुर, संबलपुर, बागत, उदयपुर, झांसी एंड नागपुर. These are the years. क्या है? सतारा, जैतपुर, संबलपुर, बागत, उदयपुर, झांसी एंड नागपुर. टोटल 7 ड्यूरिंग द टेन्योर ऑफ डलहौजी. इसके पहले भी कुछ थे लेकिन. ठीक है. डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ लैप्स इज नॉट द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ मिसगवर्नेंस. ठीक है. तो अलग अलग डॉक्ट्रिन है. क्या? ये सॉरी 1884 लिख दिया है. ये 1854 है. दिस इज 1854. ठीक है. Now, next, consider the following princely states of British rule in India: Jhansi, Sambalpur, Satara. Correct chronological in which they were annexed. सबसे पहले सतारा, then संबलपुर and lastly झांसी. Correct answer 3-1 C. Consider the following events: Ahmad Shah Abdali's first invasion of India, revolts of Sikhs under Banda Bahadur, Nadir Shah's invasion of India, and capture of Delhi by the British. Arrange them in the correct chronological order. Ahmad Shah Abdali's first invasion of India, 1748. He invaded India a total of 6 times. Last invasion came in 1761, which formed the occasion for which famous battle? The third battle of Panipat. But before that, he had started invading India back from 1748 itself. The Sikhs revolted under a Sikh leader, Banda Bahadur, after the assassination of Guru Tegh Bahadur. When? During the period of 1708 to 1715. So, early 18th century. Nadir Shah's invasion of India. Nadir Shah, ruler of Persia, invaded India famously in 1739. Who was the ruler? Muhammad Shah Rangila. Capture of Delhi by the British. This took place in 1803, when the second Anglo-Maratha war was going on. So, Delhi by this point of time was a protectorate of the Marathas. As the Marathas were defeated, Delhi also was captured by the British. ठीक है. Correct chronological order. सबसे पहले 3, 1, sorry 2, 3, 1, 4. 2, 3, 1, 4 कौन सा वाला है? D. Number 61. The introduction of forward policy in India entitled the British to either make treaties with neighboring countries or to annex them completely. Who advocated this policy? So, forward policy was infamously applied in order to force Afghanistan to accept the Treaty of Subsidiary Alliance and to accept a British resident at Kabul. By which Governor General? By Lytton in 1878, resulting in the Second Anglo-Afghan War, 1878 to 1880. समझ में आया है? Why the answer would not be Auckland? Auckland was Governor General during the first Afghan War. The circumstances to the first Afghan War were created by what? By refusal by the Afghan monarch to accept a favorable treaty by the British, or was it the result of another tripartite alliance that had emerged between the British and some other Indian powers? Tripartite alliance emerge हुआ था after the tripartite treaty between the East India Company signed by Lord Auckland, the Sikh Empire signed by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and Shah Shuja, the deposed Afghan ruler who was residing under British protection and with a British pension at Ludhiana in Punjab. So the idea was that ये जो शाह शुजा है, he is going to be placed on the throne at Kabul and the reigning ruler is going to be deposed. So did this involve any application of the forward policy? Was any offer of a favorable terms made to the sitting ruler of Afghanistan? No such terms were offered and therefore forward policy इसको नहीं बोलेंगे. Forward policy के लिए कौन responsible है? It is Lytton. Yeah, immediately before the Second Anglo-Afghan War. Match the following: list 1 name of war and name of Governor General. List 2 Second Anglo-Sikh War. Who was Governor General? Dalhousie. When did it take place? 1849. A का 3. First Burma War 1824 to 26. Who was Governor General? Amherst. First Afghan War, Auckland. And Second Afghan War, Lytton. 3, 4, 2, 1. B. What changes did British industrial capitalism bring to India in the 19th century? Number 1, the acquisition of Indian states. Yes or no? Yes. Number 2, comprehensive reforms in the administrative structure. Yes or no? Yes. Number 3, promotion of commercial farming. Also yes. How is this associated with industrial capitalism? What is the association? During the phase of industrial capitalism, India was supposed to be a provider of cheap raw material and a consumer of British products, for which it was thought that acquisition of Indian states was important, so that the market for British goods in India could be efficiently expanded and raw material from India could be efficiently extracted. Secondly, comprehensive reforms in the administrative structure would have to be brought out. Why? Because the British wanted to establish law and order in India, without which further expansion of their commercial presence would be threatened. They wanted to bring about administrative reforms and promotion of commercial farming in order to provide raw material to the British. Correct answer is all three. Number 64. Which of the following Governor Generals was associated with the suppression of Thuggy? It was Bentinck. In 1829, he introduced the Suppression of Thuggy Act and began a major program to end the practice of Thuggy. Number 65. With reference to the Charter Act of 1833, consider the following statement. Number 1. it legalized India's status as a British colony? Yes or no? Yes. So it did two things in this regard. First of all, it ended the role of the company as a commercial entity and established it as a purely political entity. This was the first time that the company's government in India started to be called the government of India. And second most important thing it did was that it declared that the company would be allowed to govern the territories it held in India in trust for the British Crown. So, British Crown was declared as the paramount power over the company. So, in this way, the status of India as a British colony was legalized by this act. So, this is correct. Number 2, the Governor General of Bengal was redesignated as Governor General of India. Yes, first Governor General of India, Bentinck. And third, East India Company lost its monopoly of trade with China. Yes, this is also correct. Which of these are correct? All 1, 2 and 3. D. Now, question 66. Consider the following statements. The Charter Act of 1813 removed licensing restrictions on British settlement in India. Correct or incorrect? This is correct. Why? Because it had ended the company's monopoly in India and therefore it allowed all British subjects to come and settle in India in order to conduct free trade with India. So, statement number 1 is correct. Number 2, the Charter Act of 1833 provided for the appointment of a separate governor for the Bengal presidency. This is incorrect. Separate governor for Bengal presidency, this was provided for by the Charter Act of 1853, not the Charter Act of 1833. Okay. So, which of these is correct? A, one only. Number 67. Which of the following Charter Acts introduced the concept of civil law in India? The answer is Charter Act of 1833. Kaise? Yeah, it was the act which established the Law Commission headed by the law member of the Governor General's Executive Council. First law member कौन था? P.B. Macaulay. And the purpose of this law commission was to codify laws for India. All types of law, taxation law to inheritance law to marriage law, personal law to criminal law. So, all the criminal codes, the civil codes, etc., they are going to be drafted by this body. Okay. So, which act provided for it? Charter Act of 1833. Next question, assertion and reason. Assertion. The doctrine of lapse formulated by Governor General Dalhousie disregarded the right of an adopted heir to the throne and the state automatically lapsed into British dominion if the ruler died without any biological natural heir. Is the statement true or wrong? It is wrong. Why? It was not formulated by Dalhousie. It had been postulated by the Court of Directors back in 1834. As for the rest of the statement, is it correct? Yes. What did that act provide for? That if the ruler of any Indian state that has been created through a British charter dies without leaving behind a naturally born legal male heir, then the rule of that state is going to lapse and its dominion is going to automatically pass on to the British government of the company in India. That is what that act provided for. Reason, the doctrine of lapse was one part of Dalhousie's program to bring a unified India under strict control by doing away with alternative sovereignties held by Indian rulers and princes. This is correct. So correct combination क्या है? A is false but R is correct. The Rayatwari settlement was first introduced by Elphinstone, Reed, both A and B, or Lord Hastings. It is Captain Reed. Alexander Reed, a military official posted in the Baramahal division of the Madras Presidency in 1818, introduced the Rayatwari settlement on a pilot project basis. In 1820, impressed by the performance of this project, it was applied universally throughout the Madras Presidency by its governor, Thomas Munro. And 2 years later, in 1822, it was applied to the Bombay Presidency by its governor, Mountstuart Elphinstone. ठीक है? The English introduced the Rayatwari system for the first time in Bengal Presidency, Agra Presidency, Bombay Presidency, or Madras Presidency. Madras Presidency. Tipu had been defeated back in 1792. It had become part of the Madras Presidency back then. For the first time, Rayatwari was introduced over here by Captain Reed in 1880. ठीक है? So Reed and Thomas Munro were contemporaries of each other. ऐसा नहीं है that it was implemented back then. Number 71. Consider the following statements pertaining to Rayatwari settlement. Number 1. Government directly collected revenue from peasants. Yes or no? Yes. The government issued pattas or permits to tenants. Yes, these were title deeds. Number 3. Surveys were carried out to assess value and productivity of land. Yes, for this purpose, a new department of Surveyor General had been established. So which of these are correct? 1, 2 and 3. Did the settlement provide for periodic revision of revenue demand or not? Yes, every 20 to 30 years it would be reassessed. Which of the following was the originator of Mahalwari settlement? Holt, Mackenzie and William Merton's Bird. So answer is D. Holt, Mackenzie. इसके साथ Mackenzie and Bird. Number 73. The summary settlement of 1856 was based on which of the following assumptions? A. The talukdars were the rightful owners of the land. B. The talukdars were interlopers with no permanent stakes in the land. C. The talukdars could evict peasants from the land. Or D. Talukdars would take proportion of the revenue which flowed to the state. So first of all, summary settlement introduced in 1856 where? In Awadh, after its annexation by which Governor General? Dalhousie. On what basis? On the basis of pretext of misgovernance. Now, after this, the British tried to quickly bring the revenue administration of Awadh under their control, since they expected the rich region of Awadh to yield a large revenue for them, and therefore they introduced the summary settlement. Before this, the revenue administration in Bengal was being run by a class of middlemen, a class of revenue collectors known as talukdars. So who were the talukdars? These were the rent collectors who had been given some administrative power. On what basis had they been given administrative power and the right to collect revenue? Because they represented the dominant houses in the rural setting. So these were the rural landed magnates. That means they were large landowners in their own right. They had large personal land holdings, and because they were the dominant entity in the villages, they were given the right to collect revenue by the Nawabs of Bengal as well. Further, since they were closely associated with the Nawab's officialdom, Nawab's bureaucracy, they were also given some administrative and policing powers. Local justice and policing was in their hands along with revenue collection. How were they repaid for their revenue collecting services? They were allowed to keep a portion of the revenue that they collected as commission. Further, they were exempted from the payment of revenue on their own personal land holdings. Okay? So in the Mughal system, the role that was played by zamindars, that was exactly the role that was played by talukdars under the Awadh system in the kingdom of Awadh. Is this clear? Now, when the British introduced the summary settlement, did they keep the role of the talukdars intact or did they dismiss the talukdars? All talukdars were dismissed, and revenue collection became the responsibility of newly introduced district collectors. Why? Because at this point of time, the British had become very familiar with the evils of permanent settlement, the ills of the permanent settlement. And what was the biggest ill of the permanent settlement? That it caused the creation of a class of parasitic middlemen, parasitic rent seekers, the zamindars, who added little to the production process but took away surplus from both the government as well as the actual peasant. So this resulted in losses on both ends. So now all their revenue experiments are going to have which element, which aspect? Will they want to create a strong class of middlemen, of intermediaries, or will they seek to prevent the emergence of middlemen? Prevent the emergence of middlemen. This is known as the rent theory. It was given by a British economist, David Ricardo, in the early 19th century. So, summary settlement was based on that Ricardian rent theory, and it was felt that the talukdars were interlopers with no permanent stakes in the land, right? So that they were involved only in the parasitic collection of revenue and the appropriation of surplus. They did not add to the production process in any major way. Okay? So that is the assumption on the basis of which the summary settlement was made. What was the result? Now this assumption, was it a valid assumption or was it a wrong assumption on the part of the British? It was a wrong assumption on the part of the British. The talukdars had traditionally been acting as the pillars of the rural community. In times of need, they were the ones who stepped in to provide relief to the peasants, and they were the ones who provide leadership during crisis periods, especially during wars or riots or things like that. And once the talukdars were removed from their position, what is going to happen? The peasants who are increasingly unsure of their future, further they are going to start facing the problem of rising revenue. Who are they going to turn to? To their traditional rulers, traditional leaders, that is the talukdars. And the talukdars, are they going to step in or not? They are going to step in. They are also aggrieved. Why? Because their traditional powers and privileges have been taken away. And this was one of the reasons for the vigor and strength with which the Great Revolt of 1857 1857 was carried out in Awadh. समझ में आया है? The introduction of the summary settlement. जमींदार की तरह मैं बोलूंगा, जागीरदार नहीं, जागीरदार फ्यूडल इंडिविजुअल्स होते हैं. Now, jagirdars also have a stake in the administration of the state, right? They did not have any state in central administration. They were active only at the local level. Match list 1 with list 2 and select the correct answer using the codes given below. Lands allotted to big feudal lords. Jagirdari system. A ka 1. Land allotted to rent collectors. Zamindari system. 4. Land allotted to each peasant with the right to sublet, mortgage, transfer, gift or sell. Raiyatwari system. And revenue settlements made at the village level. Mahalwari system. That is 3. So 1, 4, 2, 3. B. Then question 75. Which of the following statements is not true? A. The Charter Act of 1793 allowed the British East India Company to maintain a monopoly on trade with India. Correct or incorrect? Correct. So, company's monopoly was confirmed by the Charter Act of 1793. B. The Charter Act of 1813 abolished British East India Company's monopoly on trade with India. Also true. So, it ended company's monopoly in India. C. The Charter Act of 1833 established the Governor General of India as head of British administration in India. Also correct. And D. The Charter Act of 1853 abolished the system of open competition for the recruitment of civil servants in India. This is incorrect. In fact, it introduced the system of open competition. Okay? So, statement D is incorrect. Question 76. Which of the following statements are correct? 1. British trade surplus with India in the 19th century meant that the value of British exports to India was much higher than the value of British imports from India. Is this statement correct or incorrect? It is correct. That is what British trade surplus with India meant. That the total value of all the goods that are being imported into India from Britain, they are more valuable than the value of the goods being exported from India to Britain. So, Britain has a trade surplus over India. This acted as one of the important instruments of drain of wealth. Number 2, India played a crucial role in the late 19th century world economy by helping Britain balance its deficits. This is also correct. So, while Britain had a trade surplus with India, it had a trade deficit with other important players such as China or the USA, etc. So, had it not been for the trade surplus with India, Britain would also have run a huge trade deficit. And what was being done by the British? Its trade surplus with India was being used to stave off its own drain of wealth. The drain of wealth was being transferred from the British economy onto the Indian economy. Okay? So, statement 2 is also correct. Number 3, Britain grew opium in India and exported it to China. Therefore, for a while after the 1820s, opium became India's single largest export. This is also correct. Now, Britain was importing a number of finished products, namely silk and textiles, porcelain and some other things, luxury products from China. However, China did not need much of what Britain had to offer. Therefore, there was a great trade imbalance. How did the British overcome this trade imbalance? पूरे चाइना को अफीमची बना दिया. They got the entire country of China addicted to opium. They began producing large amounts of opium, processing it in India and taking it to China and flooding the Chinese market with Indian opium. And therefore, during the 1830s, late 1820s and early 1830s, opium became India's single largest export. It remained so till which war? The first opium war. Okay? In 1838. Those third statement is also correct. And fourth, the 19th century saw export of Indian raw materials decline and that of manufactured goods increase. Is this correct? This is incorrect. Exactly the opposite thing happened. Raw material exports increased, whereas both industrial production as well as industrial exports declined. So, which of these is correct? D. 1, 2 and 3 only. Number 77. In the context of the Anglo-Mysore Wars, arrange the following events in the correct chronological order. Treaty of Seringamapatnam, death of Tipu Sultan, Treaty of Mangalore, Treaty of Madras. So, first one, Treaty of Madras. After which war? First Anglo-Mysore War. Second, Treaty of Mangalore. After the Second Anglo-Mysore War. Third, Treaty of Seringamapatnam, 1792, after the Third Anglo-Mysore War, and death of Tipu Sultan in 1799. The end, and with this the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War ended. So correct answer 4312. कौन सा वाला है? C. 4312. Question 78. Consider the following statements in context of Anglo-Mysore Wars 1767 to 99 and identify the correct one. Number 1. Nizam and Marathas sided with the British in all Mysore Wars. False. During the first Anglo-Mysore War, they were with the Kingdom of Mysore. So initially they were allied with the British, but Hyder Ali had been able to induce them out of their Anglican alliance. Okay? First is incorrect. Second, all except the Third Mysore War was won by the English. This is also incorrect. Correct statement क्या होना चाहिए? All except the first Anglo-Mysore War was won by the British. Number 3. The Fourth Mysore War ended with the Treaty of Seringamapatnam between the British and Tipu Sultan. Incorrect. Third ended with the Treaty of Seringamapatnam. Fourth ended with the death of Tipu Sultan. Third is also incorrect. So correct answer is D. All statements are incorrect. Question 79. In the context of the British conquest of India in the mid-18th century, arrange the following events in the correct chronological order. Treaty of Salbai, Treaty of Surat and Treaty of Vadgaon. Which war are they associated with? The First Anglo-Maratha War. Okay? The First Anglo-Maratha War began in 1775 with which treaty? The Treaty of Surat. Okay? This was a treaty signed between the Bombay government of the East India Company and one of the contenders to the throne of the Maratha Peshwa, that is Raghav or Raghunath Rao. Raghunath Rao asked for British assistance to place him on the throne. In return, he promised two territories to the British. Which ones? Salsette and Bassein. However, this treaty had not been ratified by the Governor General of Bengal, that is Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings had been made Governor General of Bengal and had been given supervisory military authority over the governors of Bombay and Madras. Once he did not ratify this treaty, a new treaty was ratified by the representatives of the Governor General and the Marathas. This was known as the Treaty of Purandar, 1776, signed between the Maratha Confederacy led by Nana Sahib and the representatives of the Bengal government. Okay? However, the governor of Bengal, governor of Bombay, is he going to accept this treaty? No, there was a conflict over jurisdiction. Therefore, he rejected this treaty and the war continued, right? Ultimately, the Bombay government's army was badly defeated, cornered and surrounded and forced to accept the humiliating convention of Vadgaon by the Marathas in 1779. But this convention was rejected by the Governor General of Bengal. ठीक है, देख रहे हो क्या हो रहा है? That there is a tussle for power going on between the Governor General of India and the Provincial Governor of Bombay, and he is now going to send a huge army under his trusted officials to take care of the Marathas. One after the other, Marathas are going to be pushed back, but the British are also going to take major losses, and in the end, the two sides are going to sign an honorable treaty called the Treaty of Salbai. When? In 1782. करेक्ट आंसर क्या हुआ? 231 ए. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन नंबर 80. Consider the following statements with respect to provisions related to education in the Charter Act of 1833. Number 1. India was fully open to missionaries of all the nations. Correct or incorrect? This is correct. Now, the Charter Act of 1813 had ended the company's monopoly in India and allowed for all British to come and settle in India. Following this, or that act also provided for the company to promote the activities of Christian missionaries in India, but initially licensing restrictions had been placed on those missionaries, especially on foreign missionaries. Now those licensing restrictions on foreign missionaries were lifted. So the India was fully open to missionaries of all nations by this act. And secondly, Indians knowing English became eligible to get high posts under the government. This is also correct. How? Because the act for the first time provided that no Indian shall be discriminated against in matters of recruitment only on the basis of place of birth, sex, caste, creed or gender. Okay? So that means Indians could now act as civil servants, could now be appointed as civil servants. Did this take place in reality or did this provision remain only on paper? It remained only on paper. अच्छा, I'll just discuss this question and then I'll end this session. 5 बजे से दूसरा session होने वाला है. Now, in 1833, Indians became eligible for civil services. ठीक है? However, no Indian is going to enter the higher civil services. Why? Because recruitment into the civil services, especially at the higher levels, was a matter of court patronage. So that means it was up to the court of directors. They were the ones who nominated candidates to the civil services in India. There was no system of open competition. Is this clear? Sure. For the first time in 1853, The Charter Act of 1853 provided for open competition. ठीक है? And now a pathway was cleared for the entry of Indians into the civil services. But it was only in 1856 that for the first time competitive examinations were held. For 2 more years, 1854, 1855, no recruitment took place. Ultimately, when the need emerged, 1856, the first civil services examination was conducted by the company. Where? In India or in Britain or in both these places? Only in Britain, in London. And thus, are large number of Indians going to qualify? No, very few Indians participated and none qualified. For the first time in 1861, an Indian is going to succeed. First Indian civil servant, CCS, Covenanted Civil Serviceman, कौन बने? The SN Tagore. ठीक है? Now, it had long been a demand of the Indian leaders to conduct simultaneous examinations for the civil services examination in India and Britain. Ultimately, the British agreed all the way in 1922. So, 1922, first simultaneous exams in India and Britain. Okay. So, we have completed till question 80. The remaining questions we will endeavor to cover tomorrow along with the next section. Alright. So, thank you for your time. I will be seeing you at the same time tomorrow as well.